It's always tense right before the big day, isn't it? Andor continuing. And this is, I would say, probably the most low-key episode that we've had so far. This is purely an anticipation episode. It's building towards what we know is coming with the job that Andor has been brought onto, working with the rebels. Well, it's funny. And they do identify it as the rebellion, but it's becoming very clear right now, like, it's not really full bore yet. Like, they're pulling it together, but it's scattered and it is organized and it is trying to do its best. But like, in trying to fly under the radar, it is a lot less pulled together and cohesive than maybe it could be if they were, not terrified of being discovered. The fact that there even is an organized rebellion doesn't appear to be something the Empire is even aware of at present. So, and that's to their advantage, but trying to maintain that clearly makes operations difficult. And that's why, even though this is a setting up the pieces for what comes next kind of episode, I still like it because it has that tension and it has the mix of the people who are the idealists, who really believe in just the core ideas and the philosophy of the cause of fighting the Empire. You have people with distinct personal grudges. You have people in it for money, and they can still all come together and do something that is important. However, at the same time, like, these are people with very disparate causes, and there's going to be tension. And I actually deeply love that Andor pointed out that, the guy going after the Kyber crystal, coming at him for the fact that he was hired and he was paid, he's saying, look, if it wasn't this, it was something else. Everybody is really tense. We do this tomorrow. And it's going to be a really tough day, the day before it always is. And I like that he pointed that out so that it doesn't become something like pinpoints this guy is a problem because he doesn't trust Andor. It's like, this guy latched onto something that honestly he had reason to suspect was off, but he's also looking for a way to vent very understandable frustration with, well, life, but also the immediate stuff that's going on around him. The main thread that I'm kind of looking at going, where's that going, is with, I don't know if I've ever learned this guy's name, but I still keep referring to him as the Weasel Turd. The guy who was the corporate security officer who got fired, and we're now seeing him with his mother. I'm kind of intrigued as to where that's going, and I'm glad that that is, at present, the only story thread where I'm like, what's going on? Why is that here? Why are we doing that? Because if you do too many of those, I can start wondering that about the show as a whole. Like, why are we doing any of this? But when you have a good solid core that I know why the story is doing that, I know why the story is showing us Mon Mothma, because it's showing the degree of tension at every level of this struggle against the Empire. Ground level, the people trying to pull the money together, everybody is constantly tense. So, like, that matters. Showing us the investigation being done by that woman in the Empire who's starting to put the pieces together that there is an organized rebellion. That's obviously there for good reason, because it ratchets up the tension and the idea that the Empire is starting to catch on to them. But this guy, I don't know what his deal is. And I think I can let you get away with one, sort of, I don't know where you're going with that, but you wouldn't keep bringing it up if you weren't going somewhere with it. At least I would hope not, at any rate. And this show has been good enough so far that I'm trusting that it's going somewhere interesting. I mean, the general characterization, here's the thing, I'm kind of letting that go largely out of interest to see where it's going. Because the moment-to-moment, scene-to-scenes with him and his mother and, having blue milk with his cereal, it was kind of, I don't know, like, I've seen this dynamic and I don't find it especially interesting, and I'm not invested enough in this guy as a character yet to care about sort of where he came from. So I am still intrigued by it, but primarily for wondering where it is going rather than what it's currently doing. So whether or not this story thread is a strength or possibly one of the weaker elements is going to almost entirely depend on where the heck they are going with it and whether or not I ultimately think it was worth doing. Because, like, the scenes aren't bad, but if ultimately I don't think too much of where they went with it, then I'll come back in hindsight and think, maybe we didn't need those. But right now, it's like, I'm still dang curious. Still want to know. Still want to see where that's going. And again, like, everybody's really good. And the small things about the tension between these people and the things that rile them up, the things that make them anxious, and Andor being as observant as he is and picking up on a lot of it, whether he chooses to say it out loud or not. He's very in tune with what's going on. And at the same time, he's not currently personally invested in what's going on. So it's interesting to just watch him be in this environment and be around these people. I'm still definitely enjoying this. And this episode is one that ultimately I don't have all that much to say. Oh, I suppose the other thing that was interesting was sort of realizing how, as much as they are trying to plan and be meticulous and be careful, that ultimately the rebellion is still flying by the seat of its pants because there's only so much they can control for. There's only so many resources they have. And there's some things that they have to just kind of trust are going to work out because they don't have that resource or that information locked down. But if they try and find it, their window's going to close. They're not going to get the opportunity. So they're prepared to roll the dice on some things, as is brought up by Andor, going over the plan, being like, and realizing that they fundamentally didn't understand certain things about the vehicle they're trying to get away with, and being like, what would you have done if I wasn't here? And they basically said, like, we would have brute forced it. And maybe that would, they don't admit this part, but maybe that would not have worked. But what they were trying to do was important enough that they would have tried anyway. And like, we've seen how careful and meticulous they have been about everything that they can control for, but you can't control for everything, especially not in a situation like this when you are up against a foe this all-encompassing, this powerful. So that, like, moments like that are really good. And honestly, you know what was a shockingly tense moment? When the TIE fighter buzzed them. Because, like, first of all, TIE fighters, like, I grew up on TIE fighters. I don't think they're scary as a thing, especially for how easily they get blown up in most things. But something about how close it came, how low to the ground, how loud it got, it made me afraid of it. I don't remember ever, like, having that sense of, and like hearing that sound, that incredibly familiar sound, just start low and then just louder and louder and louder. And it looks like it's just like 10 feet off the ground, maybe, when it buzzes them. It's like, oh, dang, okay. And that's something that Rogue One had a little bit as well with the AT-AT walkers. I refuse to call them AT-ATs. It sounds stupid. I will call them AT-ATs. But the thing is that movie had, certain moments where just the ways they were shot really brought the emphasis to how big they were and how looming and powerful they seemed. And this kind of does a similar thing with something as basic as a TIE fighter. This thing's so well put together. I'm really still digging the heck out of this. Even this, which is, like I said, this is a bridging episode. Like, we set up all the characters that we're gonna need for this little 3-episode mini arc, and the next episode we're actually gonna see if they can pull this off. This is just connecting in between, but even this bridging episode is still quite good. Like, maybe I would consider it the weakest episode of the show so far, but that's by default. It's not because there's anything wrong with it. I'm loving this show so much, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be loving it. Because I remember seeing everybody else fall in love with The Mandalorian and being jealous of that like, The Mandalorian's fine, but it didn't hit me like this is hitting me. And now it's like, oh, it feels good to like properly love a Star Wars thing. It's been too long. And it's not just even a raw time. I've watched too many Star Wars things that I've either been like, yeah, or just haven't worked. Oh, without reservation, I'm loving this. Andor, episode 5. What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon is what pays the bills and allows me to do this as my living. Even if you can't do that, like, share, subscribe, help as well. But don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. Time to give my thanks to my highest supporting patrons. That would include Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Theotha Boyd, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Zach, Idolin, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam RDL Taylor, Shane Ross, Shayla Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. If you want your name said while these guys try and distract me, consider looking at the rewards of my Patreon.